Welcome to In the Know, Navigating Life. I'm Mentor Mama Gwynneth. This idea came out of a conversation with my mentee and some good friends when I found myself suddenly out of work and wondering what the spiritual reason was for that and what is my purpose. What I learned from those conversations and meditation is that I have a story to share and that people like hearing about my thoughts on current topics and how I got from A to B from my background. And so, therefore, I'm starting to share it with the wider public. This is a project that is living and in creation, so I invite you to like and subscribe and to share your podcast ideas with me. What would you like to hear going forward? What do you want me to know about? From the beginning, per se, I had a really tough upbringing. It's one that most people would be surprised of and would have expected me to either end up on drugs, pregnant early, in a gang, or just dead. My mother is a paranoid well, she's not a paranoid, she's a schizophrenic, and it presents differently, probably because she has the Thai background. She was born in Thailand and came here as an adult. And my father was a paranoid schizophrenic, born and bred American, and I think the two societies kind of influence. That's my unofficial opinion, but just as a daughter, having watched them throughout my life, that's what it is. The two of them divorced when I was really young, and on one side I had my father's parents for support, or well, my father's dad rather, and on the other side my mom's family was in Thailand and they were too poor to be able to help and support. I was considered exotic, being that I was half Thai and half white, and I was reminded of that everywhere I went, which most of the time wasn't a bad thing per se. People were curious, but it did remind me that I was other and I wasn't from here. But the thing was that I'd lived in the United States all but 1 year of my life. And so it was the only home I knew. And as a child, you just think, I'm me. What the heck does exotic mean? And why do people keep looking at me like I'm a curiosity? And then, I have different evidences of light racism sprinkled in with people denying my Asianness for various reasons. That's a longer story for another day. When I was 16, I found myself super depressed. I did not understand why. I didn't understand why the joy in life had gone out. I remembered from church, I think the scriptures, Matthew 3:16, goes something to the effect of, those who shall lose their life in the service of others shall find it. So I was asking myself, what could I do to serve, when my high school, San Pasqual High School in Escondido, was offering tryouts to be a peer counselor. And so I tried out and to my surprise was accepted. And I think I cited that as one of the reasons why I wanted to join the program. I really didn't know exactly what it was, but they said that we'd be helping other students feel better. And so I thought, okay, that sounds good. That was the end of sophomore year going into junior year. 2 weeks before school started, we were offered the opportunity to join the North County Inland Recovery Center. I don't think they're around anymore. They had a drug outpatient rehab center, and they had a grant to train teenagers to be suicide counselors on a hotline. So our whole job was just to answer the suicide hotline as volunteers, try to get that person to feel better enough to seek other help, just to kind of help them feel better and get them referred on to other services, which was a noble goal. In order to be trained for that, we sat through 2 weeks, 30 hours a week, so 6 days at 5 days a week of intensive training about, entry-level psychology and social work types of things, the dysfunctional family dynamic, about how to be a really good listener, how to empathize, how not to get too emotionally invested, but enough to be supportive, what was supportive, what was not. We did a lot of intertrust exercises as part of that group effort. And that program saved my life. It's where I learned what mental health was. I learned about mental health resources. I learned that I was not alone, that other people were also struggling. Prior to this, I hadn't told anybody what I was going through or what I was dealing with. And when I look back on that time, I was suicidal, and I didn't know it. I was headed off a cliff really fast. Because of that program, I found support and love and a vehicle to understand what I was going through and some tools on how to handle it. And I'll be forever grateful to that center, to Patty Ann Hansen, who trained us, a psychologist that she recommended me to, Dr. Stephen A. Maybell, for setting me on the right path and giving me the tools I needed to make a better life. I swear from that day forward, I've used those tools in my life, and that was over 30 years ago. I use those tools daily. Given where I was and what my family background was, I really don't feel that I would be where I'm today without that start. Well, maybe I should back up a second. I went through that program, and by the time I was 17, my dad had officially been diagnosed bipolar disorder. He would go on to be diagnosed a couple of different times, or the diagnosis would change. But the bottom line was he was mentally unstable to live with. And so at 18, 2 months before I graduated, I found myself needing to get out of the house before things got any more toxic and to survive. So with the help of my bishop at church, I found a place to live. I talked to my high school teachers. I got a second job. So I literally moved out of the house in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment with $148 that I handed over for my first month's deposit, and got a second job so I could make my bills for the upcoming month, and started my life. And the only things I knew at that point was that I needed to get out of the house and I wanted to go to college. I didn't know how, but I knew that was my ticket out of living in poverty and out of that mentality. And somehow it was going to happen for me. A few months later, because I couldn't be the neighborhood babysitter anymore, since my jobs were paying more than the babysitting jobs, I just was blown away when I was offered to be a live-in nanny for the Live Saves based on recommendations of 2 other families in the neighborhood. Worked for them in the day, and then I went to school at Palomar College at night. It's a long story, but basically that started me off. I can point to different people who would come into my life and offer me some sort of support at exactly the time I needed it to get me to the next step. And oftentimes, just when I thought I was about to give up or I was frustrated, somehow, somewhere, I would run into somebody or be in a situation talking, and all of a sudden that hand would show up and be supportive. And they were always different people in different situations. I could spend a long time on this area. But I attribute that to divine providence, God, the universe, love, light, whatever you want to call it, however you see it, it was in there. And by the grace of God, I made it out of like one toxic, crazy situation to go on to lead a really great life. So, as a result of seeing firsthand how important it was that people heard the call and saw something in me and decided to support me in some way, it taught me a valuable lesson. And that lesson was that if we are going to have a better society and a better world, we need to do this on a larger scale. And the reason is there are so many people that have even worse circumstances than what I had, who do not have someone to mentor them. Maybe their whole family is in poverty mentality and they don't know how to get out of it, but they desperately want to get out of it, and they just need someone to show them the way or help them out. I also think when I look at the homeless people on the street that somehow someone's family failed them, somehow society failed them, that they ended up on the street. And believe me, I know how difficult it is. We've got mental illness, we've got people that are addicted to drugs and things, and that's extremely difficult for a family to handle. I know that firsthand, so I'm not placing blame. But I just think that if there's a saying, I think it's scripture. I sometimes get my scripture and songs mixed up. I was raised Mormon, and this was a hymn that we used to sing, but I think it's in other churches too. And the title is, "Because I have been given much, I too must give." And so those who have enough have a duty in some way, shape, or form to give back to the world, whatever that looks like for you. And in my way, that led me to becoming a mentor to Raising Hope. Now, it took me a while to get there because the stories I just told you were from my late teens, early 20s. I would go on to take 10 years to get my BA degree. I would work 2 jobs through most of that time. I would go through tons of therapy and read self-help books. Then I got involved in my career as an environmental planner, which is a whole miracles of story in itself because there's no one in my background who even remotely has an urban planning degree or an environmental planning background. And the fact that I rose to prominence as much as I did in that field and stayed in it for so long is just flippin' amazing and a miracle in a lot of ways. So it wasn't until I was around age 45 that I finally had the means and the maturity to become a mentor and to accept the call. I got connected with the organization Raising Hope. I might have searched from them on the internet. It might have been through social media. I don't remember. But I remember they were working with kids who are aging out of the foster system. And that seems to be my age group, the late teens, early 20s that I kind of mesh with. And I applied to be a mentor in that program, and they accepted me, and they gave me some training and support. And then I met the most wonderful mentee, Janetta. She has risen from so much and has done a lot with so little. I am just proud of her. When I really realized I needed a career change and was considering some sort of podcast because I've been feeling the spiritual call to do that. And my friends were reminding me that they like to hear my advice or hear what I have to say and that I needed to share it. She strongly encouraged me to do this and to go for it. And when I feel low and when I feel like, can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I qualified? She just lifts me up. And indeed, she's also one of the producers behind this. I mean, she's been providing business coaching and graphics and creative coachings on this. And this is all self-taught on her part. I want to give her all the props that she deserves. Later, I think we'll have Raising Hope on as well, so that they can talk about their mentorship, so that if there's anyone else that would like to become a mentor, you can take advantage of their program. Or perhaps if you're able to, you can also give them money, because they do wonderful work. All right, so moving on, I'm really a big proponent of being healthy. I'm age 50 now, and I feel young. I'm a proponent and advocate of functional medicine. I've taken it for myself. I've used non-force chiropractic. It's been amazing. I don't believe that as you get older, you need to think that the aches and pains are a part of life, or that you have to get surgeries. You can do a lot of self-work to avoid that, even with an official diagnosis from a doctor. I see functional medicine as a support to Western medical and as a completely different philosophy. So I'm not completely against Western medicine, but I definitely have a preference towards functional, but I will avail myself of both services. I also have a concern about corporate media and the knowledge of civics and politics and how government works in today's day and age. I have seen a lot of conspiracy theories and misunderstandings over the last 8 years that have bothered me, and I wanted to speak out on them, but I always felt like I was in a position with my career that maybe I shouldn't speak out. And so now that I'm looking at a complete career shift, I can speak out. So I don't intend to be political in the way of like persuading you to think one way or the other. Rather, I would rather take some of the current topics of the day and discuss them from a thinking perspective. Is this a good idea? What's the reality? What's the thinking behind us? What are the things we should look out for? What are the fallacies? I'd like to be more of a discussion and conversation, and maybe a discussion on what we need to know about the topic. And then you're free to use that information how you will. Hopefully you'll use it to think about your position and come up with your opinion. I'm not one that believes in one right way over another. I would like to think and to teach a little bit more, and I'll do my best to provide sources so that you can look up the information yourself to make up your own mind. Really, the audience is anyone who finds themselves gravitating towards this. I am not going to promise to know everything. I won't know everything. I don't want to be the expert. I don't want to be the guru. However, it might be something we could talk about and talk through. It might be a topic I need to research a little bit and get back to you on. Maybe sometimes we'll bring up a topic and we'll bring up panelists who know more and let them speak to the topic. But one thing I do promise is to be authentic, honest, and myself, and to always give you the straight scoop. Thank you for listening today. Please like and subscribe. If you feel compelled to share your opinion, please write them in the comments, or you can reach out to us at Mentor Mama Gwynneth, that's GWYNNETH @gmail.com.